You'll have to tell me when we're off delay. All right. Hopefully, we're off delay. I don't know if we are, but welcome everyone to our latest update. I'm sure you're all happy for a couple of reasons, not least of which is that Carol is back. So it's going to go a lot
Sorry.
smoother when we get to the question and answer session. It's going to go a lot smoother than it did last week. Carol, I failed in your absence, so you'll be happy to know.
I'm sorry.
No, no, it's just more proof of your how an integral part of this team you are.
Sure.
Um, all you needed was one trip alone, and I failed terribly. Also, I did get messages from a lot of you saying you had a difficult time, or you could not at all dial in last week. That was a problem you were having with Microsoft with Teams. We believe we've overcome it. So I'm sure I'll find out in a few minutes if my phone
Mm,
starts buzzing. That's the problem. That's also funny, Carol. Is I'm in the middle of a webinar with like 1,000 people, and salespeople are texting me. Well, part a second, everyone. I got to get this text from a salesperson. What's that? All right. So again, we do
they have no
apologize for that.
boundaries.
No
You know how those
boundaries.
salespeople are.
No, no boundaries. Thank you all for joining us. We're sorry for last week. We hope you did receive the slides and the recording. And we will be recording this as we always do and sending it out as soon as we're able to turn it around. It does take a little bit. Please be patient. Our marketing folks are a tad busy these days. And again, thank them for making these available week after week. We do expect to be on again next week. It looks like we're going to be on Wednesday. So there will be another webinar next week. Webinars from here forward are probably going to be focused on countries other than China, I have a feeling. And as we get more refined information about the agreements with China, or as they happen, we'll be sure to let you know. So, for this week, this is the big news. This is the one that makes me the happiest. Most of us were telling the import community to remain patient, to do what they could to wait it out, quote unquote. To not make knee jerk reactions because we don't know how long this crisis is going to last. And what you don't want to do is make dramatic changes to your supply chain and then a month later everything has changed. Well, kind of on cue, about a month later, everything changed. So the big tariff news, of course, was the outcome of the meeting we talked about last week on Saturday between China and the United States in Switzerland. That outcome was extremely positive. So most tariff watchers were expecting to come out of that with a 30% country-specific tariff and the 20% IEPA for a total of 50. That's not the case. So like every other country that the United States is negotiating with, which is all of them at this point, there is only a 10% additional tariff with an additional 20% IEPA tariff. And that 20%, remember, is focused on synthetic opioids. Latest rumors out of Washington is that the IEPA tariff has a shelf life as well. That may find itself going to the wayside over the course of the next couple of months as the White House receives more information about the success of efforts by China, Mexico, and the United States to curb the importation of illegal opioids. So that also appears to have an expiration date. We don't know what it is, but it appears to have an expiration date, which means that the tariffs would then just be that 10% additional tariff. This was fantastic news. Like everything else that's happened to us over the course of the past couple of months, we get this big news, right? There's a reduction in the tariffs. Okay, awesome. Well, when does it go into place? Will it be retroactive? How is it going to be applied? What if I have 232 tariffs? What's the situation there? The great news is they were a little bit quicker this go around on precisely when these tariffs go into effect and at what position, whether it's at loading or at arrival or at entry. China also gave us a 10% tariff on U.S. goods into the U.S., which is a dramatic reduction as well. There are rumors circulating right now that China is discussing refunding the U.S. the tariffs on U.S. imports into China, so their tariffs on goods. We were all very excited because a similar rumor was swirling around our circles that the United States was going to make these tariffs retroactive. That does not appear to be the case. So, Carol, you're going to have to tell me if I'm wrong here, okay? Are you ready to tell me if I'm
Sure.
wrong about timing?
You're
Okay.
wrong.
Okay. This, starting yesterday, goods that arrived yesterday, or goods that were cleared yesterday, going forward, are going to have a 10% China tariff plus the 20% IEPA. Okay. So is that correct, Carol? Make sure I'm right.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
IEPA, unless it qualifies for one of the exclusions or is on Annex 2.
Now, the important thing to think of when we think of tariff math here, which has a time and an arithmetic component, is that if your goods arrived and you made clearance for them on the 13th, you missed it by a day. But if you made the entry yesterday on those goods, well, then you pay the 10 plus 20. Does it matter when it left? No, it doesn't. Doesn't matter if it left on the 10th. There was definitely some calculations that went on in DC of announcing the tariffs and then all of us being full of anxiety about that ocean voyage as they came here. And they're getting here about a month after all that anxiety happened. So a lot of the stuff that was on the water isn't going to be hit with these tariffs. Hallelujah. So if your stuff arrived yesterday, from yesterday forward, you're good to go. Does it matter when it left? No, it doesn't. This is all about when it got here, and we made the entry on it. The 90-day pause is probably not going to be enough time for the U.S. and China to sort through everything that we're going to sort through. This current level of agreement is going to end up including everything from buying American exports, controlling technology, export compliance, easing out of China for certain U.S. goods, and vice versa. We'll see if that happens. Discussions on auto parts, discussions on energy consumption and energy purchases in China. A lot. This is going to be a really tough one to hammer out. Okay, Pete, great. What happens after 90 days? We don't know. The prevailing wisdom is the United States, as long as the discussions are fruitful, will give some sort of an extension on that 90 days. But we won't know because we haven't had the first ones that started with a 90-day pause hit their 90 days yet. But the 14th of May is the magic date. So, updated slide on tariff arithmetic. Chinese origin goods, you have your previous tariffs plus a 20% IEPA plus a 10% China country specific. And these are applied on goods that are entered into the United States from yesterday forward. So in real time today, if it's happening from yesterday forward, for most goods, that's going to be the calculus. If it's 232 steel or aluminum eligible, you'll pay your previous tariffs, which remember is your regular tariff, the 301 Trump tariffs, anti-dumping, countervailing, the list goes on and on. So your previous tariffs plus 20% IEPA plus a 25% 232 tariff. So as we had warned in previous presentations, it may have been better to try so hard for all of you not to push yourself out of the 125% tariff and try to get yourself in a 232 because now you're paying higher tariffs, which is unfortunate. If it's derivative, your previous tariffs plus a 20% IEPA plus 25% on the steel and aluminum content if it's listed in the annex for derivatives. So this is a huge reduction. It's effectively gone down for most Chinese imports from 145% down to 30%, plus existing tariffs. And this is as of May the 14th, so yesterday. Anything you want to add here, Carol, that I might be missing?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Okay, good. So, as I said, we will be sending out these slides for those of you who are feverishly writing this down or taking screenshots. You'll get these very soon. But this is much simpler than where we were at just a couple of days ago. So, good news all around. I wanted to give you an update on a couple of countries that have come to mind. India. So, the president said to the press that India is going to drop all tariffs on all goods. And India immediately rushed back and said, "We never said that. We haven't agreed to anything. No one has said that all American imports will be duty-free into India." Well, the president said that because he believes that's the case. In additional comments that he has made, he's been told by advisors that that is the current position of India. They are willing, doesn't mean they have, but they're willing in a new agreement to completely eliminate tariffs on goods coming into India from the United States. Now, the other rumor that Donald Trump has disputed, but India is saying, is that we would get rid of that 10% tariff, that country-specific reciprocal tariff for Indian imports. This falls in line, however, with most of the deductions and rumors coming out of the USTR that there are at least 3 countries in specific that will probably not see that 10% tariff. All other countries will probably end all of this madness with a 10% tariff, but India, Canada, and Mexico most likely will not. But just about everywhere else, or the European Union as an example, is going to see a 10% tariff when everything just sort of sifts itself out and we're done. But for those 3 countries, probably not. The Trade Foreign Minister for India said nothing is decided until it's decided. So don't take anything you're hearing in the news yet until an actual announcement comes out. One of the biggest sticking points, of course, is that America would like India to stop buying energy from Iran altogether. We'll see whether or not that's a realistic take. This would be a very big win for both countries. It would be a huge win for the United States, who faces significant tariffs on agriculture into India, and a massive, massive win for India, who really is becoming the go-to outside of North America manufacturer for American consumer goods. This apparently is very close. This is days away from being announced, not weeks, not months, days. So you can expect that India will probably have some sort of a conclusion, maybe even before we have our webinar next week. We'll see. There's a really good chance. The other one I wanted to talk about specifically is Japan. The trade minister, trade negotiator for Japan is trying to come to America next week. It has not been put on the books, but they're trying to get the right people in the room. Now that China is sort of on a flight path to getting itself done, it means that all of those people who are working on the China negotiation, some of them now can focus themselves on other countries, Japan and Korea and India being 3 very, very big ones. So the idea is, now that you've got your initial agreement ready with China, can we get more of the people in the room where it happens to talk about what we need to do with Japan? And if the minister comes over, hopefully they can get through it. The talks have been going well, but the things that we're sticking on right now are removing certain standards that really are focused on safety that Japan has in place that the United States says are unnecessary, that they're non-tariff barriers to trade. That's really an opinion. I don't really have one yet. I haven't looked deep enough into it, but we want to see more American cars sold, and we want to see more American cars sold at prices that are reasonable in Japan. We want them to buy more energy, and we want them to buy significantly more from us in agriculture. We're also asking for Japan, in conjunction with Korea now, to work with the United States on producing more ships in America. There's still a huge gap on cars and parts, and that's the thing that Japan wants to get sorted out as quickly as possible. Are they subject to the 25% tariff on parts that come into America? Are they subject to the tariff on what few cars are made in Japan that are actually sold in the U.S.? Most Japanese cars that we sell in America are made here, limited exceptions. So that's really where we are with them, extremely close to having some type of positive news and positive outcome come there. We are beginning to see the post-tariff surge. So one of our leaders in the ocean side of the world, when I was in LA on Monday, said that from midnight until lunchtime, LA time on Monday, that one of the particular ocean carriers had already received 10,000 bookings out of China towards the US. The surge is underway. And there are, of course, a lot of pragmatic reasons for that. Not the least of which, but definitely the first, is that we don't know if this pause is going to hold. We don't know if one of the leaders for China or the US is going to have a change of heart, if the negotiations start stalling or they're not going in the right direction, if they say, fine, tariffs are back on. So everyone's trying to get out as much as they can while there is a pause and get it to America, and do so in a timely manner, because we have peak coming. We have the holidays coming. We have back to school coming. So we've got to try to get as much in as we possibly can. There are already changes in voyages. There are blank sailings that have been happening before this. Vessel capacity had been moved around the globe to try to support the movement of production to Southeast Asia and different parts of the world. So they've got to reposition ships now. They got to reposition mariners now. They have to change vessel sailing schedules. So there's going to be some disruption. And we've been saying that now for a couple of months. My advice to all of you is to reach out to your transportation partners. If you're a BCO, talk to your carriers directly. If you use a freight forwarder, call your forwarder directly, hopefully us, and talk to us about what we can do here. The likelihood of there being some disruption is incredibly high, and it shouldn't come as a surprise to any of us. We had a month-long pause on goods coming out of China. The second side of this is issues like shortages on equipment, congestion, right? Problems with the rail. So eventually we'll start getting things on ships. And the next problem is going to be congestion getting into the ports. And then it's going to be getting it on the rail, finding capacity for dray carriers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just like we all went through during COVID. I hope not to the extent that we did, but certainly that's a very similar situation that we'll probably find ourselves in. We're also going to have a mariner crisis. Well, there's a lot of mariners that are already at the limit for their time at sea. There's mandatory rest requirements, so they're going to have to go home. Are we going to have enough mariners for these ships? It's a real combination of problems that are all coming to an effect all at once. People were anticipating these changes, both the carriers, the forwarders, and you. So hopefully, unlike what happened with COVID, there was some better planning that went on. But really, the only advice the customs guy can give you is to talk to someone like Sasha or Ben Carson here with us, to have a conversation about how it's going to impact your business and seek some advice on how to handle disruptions. But you would be foolish not to try to get out in front of it and have that conversation now. Now, along those lines, we talked last week about a meeting that happened at the White House with some of the big box carriers who immediately started booking cargo right after. What we've learned since then is for a number of days, the United States and China were negotiating in secret. So the Financial Times was the first to really break the story, but it would appear that trade negotiators for China and the United States were having clandestine meetings at the IMF headquarters. And they were trying to talk through as much of this as they could and be able to go back and forth between the communications between the US and China, so that when they had a real meeting, when they had a proper meeting in Geneva, that they could just get through it. There's a lot of things that have to be discussed, a lot of math that has to be done. So they were trying to get as much of that done up front, not using the channels they normally use, the normal diplomatic channels, because neither side wanted to appear to be stepping back or stepping down from what was going on. So these conversations allowed them to go to Geneva pretty much ready to deal, because a lot of it had done up front. I don't know if they had noticed that there were people wearing visitors badges from China that they're forced to wear that didn't make any sense, and that's how the press got a hold of this information. So I don't think they ever wanted anyone to know, and the fact that it came out, I'm sure there'll be some collateral damage that comes from that as well. The last thing I want to talk about is, if you were to sit down with any of our brokerage folks, they would tell you that the CBP 28s and 29s they're just screaming right now. Inspections are way up. Customs is on to the trade community. They know that they've been claiming first sale without doing the investigations and the reviews. They know that you've been fiddling with value. They know you've been changing harmonized tariff codes. All the data that we give to customs through the course of an entry is reported to their enforcement wing. And from there, they're going to enforce. And many importers have made it far too simple to do that because they think they're going to get away with it. You're not going to get away with it. They have all the necessary tools they need. So for those of you who've been holding the line with purchasing, holding the line with leadership at your company, saying, if we've been importing it this way the whole time, this is not the time to change it now. This is still not the time to change anything. You need to do everything you can to maintain the course, because importing properly is importing properly regardless of where the tariffs are. Do the right thing and stay calm. More of these tariff reliefs are probably on the way. So let's keep our heads about us. Inspections are way up, particularly between Canada and the Canadian and Mexican borders with the US, looking for transshipped items, so items that are being claimed to be made in one country when in fact they were made in China, shipped to that second country and then shipped to the United States. We're not out of the woods here. That's the big message for today, because most of you knew about what happened with China. The big message for today is we're not out of the woods. This isn't over yet. The hardest part of this is going to be the final steps of the negotiation. We're probably at halftime if this were a football game. Right? There are two more halves of football to play, and this is going to be crunch time. Both parties are tired. Both parties are feeling political pressures, good and bad, from our standpoint, and both parties want to win. So the hardest part of any trade negotiation are the final steps, and a lot can go wrong between then and now. Stick with the plan, stay deeply in contact with your ocean providers and your customs house brokers, make decisions based on that advice, seek second, third opinions if you need to, but hold the line when it comes to trade compliance. So with that, again, as we always say at the end of this, that is my actual email. And yes, it's corrected, so it will come to me. And that is my personal cell phone number. If you have questions, if you need help, please do reach out. I try to get back in the same day the email was sent. Some days are better than others, but I will get back to you if you have a question. So that was only a 20-minute presentation today. We've said we'll keep it open for an hour for questions and answers. Next week, it might also be 20, 30 minutes. I don't know. But with that, Carol, I'm going to hand it over to you to see what kind of questions that we have.
Okay, let's go. All right, well, let's go with the most important one first. With the recent China news, will the beard be getting a cleanup?
Great question. So I am a big fan of shaving this off tonight, but I have certain requirements from someone I'm very fond of, who my girlfriend basically, who wants me to keep it. And that's the problem, right? I grew this stupid thing out, and now she wants me to keep it. My intention is as soon as there's a deal made, as soon as it's codified, this whole thing's coming off. The beard's getting trimmed down to a normal length. But the issue I have is people seem to love it. I hate it, but all these people seem to love me looking like a dollar store clause. So we'll see over the next few weeks. But it is my intention to eliminate this horrible gremlin on my face.
Okay, Pete, what are you hearing about the 301 tariffs and exclusions that are set to expire May 31st?
There is very little likelihood that those exclusions will be promoted beyond where they are now. Those exclusions would simply lower the leverage that the United States has. I think that the 301s going away is a little bit farther down in the future than months away. It's going to take a while, folks.
Okay, and there was a couple of people asking about the de minimis for China, which is now 54%, or $100 flat fee per shipment.
I believe
by international mail.
Yeah, international mail, it's higher than that. I think it's 75, set to go up to 125, I think, come June the 1st. De minimis is a big deal to China. So the Chinese have said that any agreement between us and them will be contingent on finding a way to make de minimis work again. They see this as a security issue, not a trade issue. In their opinion, the way that they're looking at de minimis, it's not so much that it's a bad thing for trade, it's that we can't find a way to do it safely. So they would like to work with us in finding a way to do it safely, either through more intensive inspection at the point of origin or looking for ways to use targeting tactics to identify dangerous cargo coming to the U.S. They want to see it come back desperately because it's really that next dependable level of growth in commerce for them. They don't want to see it go away. So expect that there will be a lot of arguing there. Now, at the same time, Congress is talking about a bill to completely eliminate it. And that will make it very hard to put in any agreement where the president is trying to negotiate it without going to Congress.
Okay, so when the 90 days runs out, say on August 12th, is that for being on the water or arrival in the U.S.? Basically, we don't know.
We don't know. And here's the, being super honest, right? You hate that answer. We hate it too. Customs doesn't know. The USTR doesn't know. Nobody knows. That is a decision that will be made in the White House as we get closer and closer.
Alrighty, can you speak to drawbacks? I'm hearing the previous elevated China tariffs are not eligible. What would be an eligible drawback in this current environment?
I believe the Chinese 125 is eligible.
Yes, the reciprocals and the 301s are eligible.
But not the 232s, right?
Correct. The 232s and the, yeah. They were specifically excluded, and of course the regular duties. Okay. Moving on. Yes, we can send the presentation out. Yes, we can send them. Can you explain what are Section 232 and 301?
Sure. 232 is a punitive tariff on steel and aluminum coming into America, and there are two levels of it. They are specific to harmonized tariff codes. So we have annexes that tell us precisely what they apply to. The first 232 is on products that are wholly made of aluminum and steel. The second is on derivatives. These are products that, although not wholly made of steel and aluminum, have portions of them that are. Where it is a 232 on the total of the goods, so it's in the annex for completely, wholly made steel and aluminum, you pay 25% on the value of the total product. Where it's a derivative, you take the percentage of the value and of the steel and aluminum in the total assembly. So let's say it's 40%, and you would pay the 25% on the 40% of the value. You don't have to pay, however, the additional 10% on the Chinese reciprocal, but you do have to pay the 20% IEEPA tariff. 301 tariffs are from an ancient trade policy, trade act that allow the president to put a penalizing tariff on a foreign country for unfair trade practices. These are the ones that were in place first with Mr. Trump's first term and carried on through Mr. Biden's term and still exist today. There are movements afoot right now to put 301 tariffs on both certain types of technology and finished electronics, as well as pharmaceuticals. We're still waiting for that report to come out, which I don't think is going to take much longer. We're pretty close to that report coming out.
Okay, 232 derivative articles are the tariff flags, but the duty would actually be 0. Flagging for aluminum, but no aluminum content. Would the article then be subject to the IEEPA reciprocal
and the 10%.
tariffs?
IEEPA and the 10%.
Yes, they would.
Yes.
Yep.
And one more thing to keep in mind about the steel and aluminum. We talked about this last week. When we came to an agreement with with China, it actually took them off the list. So British Steel now is not subject to the 232 tariff. And that's great news, because what if that's also the case with India? What if that'll be the case with Canada and Mexico? So there will be countries where that steel tariff will not be in play. And if this last agreement is an indication, it's going to be a bunch of them. So let's keep our fingers crossed and have some hope that that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Any news on the negotiations with the EU?
Bad. That's the news. It's not going well. So the European Union negotiations with the U.S. are really hitting an ugly snag right now on both the automotive side of things, because the United States wants to do something similar that we did with the United Kingdom, which is to limit through quota system the number of cars that can come into America. On the agriculture side, it's even worse. There are certain food safety protocols in place in the European Union that preclude the export of American beef, chicken, pork, certain types, right? They have quotas on all kinds of stuff, including dairy, and it's really not going very well at all. So that's the big update there, as well as the security stuff. I think we're waiting, all of us, for this meeting between Zelensky and Putin, where Putin might not show up. I think once that you see, and I pray we all pray, right, an end to that horrible conflict, that it will start to step up as both countries begin to work out between them who will be responsible for rebuilding that country, or nation states.
Next. Okay, any secret conversations you have heard about the 232 semiconductor tariffs?
No. I can tell you this. Most of the work has already been done on the semiconductor review. Most of the work was already done. My allergies are killing me. I'm in Kentucky, and I don't know what kind of trees they've got out here, but they were not built for my fragile nerdy endocrine system. Nothing is coming out on that. But I can tell you that secret conversations, most of the work on this was done long before the announcement.
Okay. Which date do we need to focus on for shipments already left from China? Is 5/14 an entry date or arrival date at the port of discharge?
It's for goods brought into the commerce of the United States, so it would be the entry date, or taken out of a bonded facility.
Yep. Yeah, so if you had stuff stashed in that bonded warehouse, now's a good time, right?
Yeah.
I have merchandise in China that our customer wants to return to us here in California that they don't need. The goods were produced in Brazil originally and shipped to them from Brazil. My question, would there be tariffs coming back here?
If it's U.S. goods returned, no.
But if they shipped from Brazil to China and then they're coming here, then yeah, tariffs would be applicable,
Right.
depending on the country of origin, right?
Yep.
Oh, more, yeah, a lot of the same questions, sorry.
It's all right.
My shipment that arrived on May 13th will have the 125% tariffs, is that correct?
Yes. No, if
If
they
you
were
made entry on May 13th.
if they were entered into consumption, so if an entry was done on the 13th, yes. But if they arrived on the 13th and the entry was done on the 14th, then no.
Okay, I've seen different dates on when the reciprocal period will end. What is the exact date, and is it based on cargo arrival, customs plus customs clearance?
The 90-day pause will be 90 days from the 14th of May.
Yep.
And that's assuming that we don't have an extension, which doesn't appear to be likely. It appears that we will have an extension. I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over that.
Do we know when the latest executive order regarding decreased reciprocal tariffs on China will be published in the Federal Register?
We don't. I haven't even seen an advanced one
No.
yet. Have you?
No. Nope. But the CSMS came out, so
Yeah.
that's pretty much what we go by. Yeah, it usually takes them at least a few days to get it into the Federal Register.
Right.
But the CSMS message from Customs is pretty much it.
I was in a client meeting and we were all waiting for the CMS to come out. And my phone just started freaking out. So I kept hitting pause, ignore, turned off the vibrator on it. And I stopped counting at 51 interruptions. And I was telling them something must have happened. Something must have happened. Thomas Ladd, our brokerage manager in LA, said, "Oh yeah, we got customs guidance finally on the dates." I was like, "Oh, that's what's going on." So yeah, my phone went crazy as soon as that happened.
Right. Assuming no further amendments, when the Chinese reciprocal pause ends on August 12th, will the rates return to 125 or to the 34% indicated in the original executive order?
I don't know how many different ways to answer this one, right? We don't know. We don't know.
Until they actually tell us. They
Until they
don't
tell
know
us.
yet.
They don't know yet. The prevailing wisdom is that there'll be an extension. So 90 will go to 120, which will go to 150, which will go to 180. We don't know. But right now, the way it's written, yeah, after the 90 days, you'd pay the tariffs. That just does not seem like a very smart negotiations tactic.
Okay, what are the IEEPA exclusions?
There's some very specific exclusions that are in the annex for things like copper, right? There's a bunch of them.
There's an Annex 2 list of HTS codes, yeah, which is like a lot of different metals and stuff. And then there are some very specific exclusions if it's like for humanitarian aid, if it's informational
Diplomatic cargo.
materials, right? So
Yeah.
informational materials, so like CDs or printed matter or stuff like that. And yeah, there's only like 4 or 5 of those. And it's in the original CSMS message. What have you heard about the possibility of semiconductor industry exemptions going away?
The investigation that's currently underway into that will most certainly have some impact because we are expecting significant tariffs on those categories once it comes out. So it's not so much an exemption going away, it'll just be reintroducing a new tariff regime. So they might still be exempt from the 10% country specific, formerly the 125 country specific, but it'll be because it's being hit with a ridiculous tariff on the 232.
Okay, has there been an update from CBP on potential refunds on the 20% IEEPA tariffs paid on Mexican origin goods that qualify for USMCA that entered between March 4th and 6th?
Not that I've heard of.
No, and that last time I looked at that, they were pretty specifically said no. So it doesn't look like they're planning on that either. Any insight on where reciprocals on Taiwan and Vietnam may be headed?
They're at 10% now because we're negotiating. So for both of them, they'll likely stay that way. The likely outcome of all these negotiations is most countries will have a 10% tariff, and that'll be that, even after we have an agreement. That would appear to be the stance of the U.S. government right now.
Okay. I understood the reciprocal tariff would not be charged in addition to the Section 232 tariffs, but I believe your presentation says it is.
No, it doesn't.
No, those don't
And no, it
stack.
did not. Yeah, they don't stack.
Okay. Great information. Please share the presentation. Yes, we will be sharing the presentation. Give
I
it
don't
a
think
day or
anyone's
two.
listening, Carol. I don't think they're listening.
What is the earliest we can clear once on the water? Customs brokers are going to be busy clearing as fast as they can in August. Any recommendations?
That's funny. 10 days prior to arrival. The regs say 10 days prior to arrival. So call your broker up and say, I want these cleared as fast as we can. And they'll say, great. I've already got people working 60 hours of overtime a week. I'll see what I can do about getting it done for
right?
you.
Yeah,
But
they are working massive
the
overtime.
the answer to that question is 10 days prior to arrival you can make entry.
But you won't see a release until it's 5 days
Right.
out.
Right.
Okay, would Chinese cargo sitting at an FTZ under privileged foreign status be able to enter at the 30%
No.
tariff now? No.
No. No. You pay the
Privileged
tariff.
foreign.
You pay the tariff on privileged foreign on the tariff that was in place when it enters the zone. For a bonded warehouse, you would pay it on the tariff on the day that it exits the zone. So all those people that made the opposite bet, the tariffs would go down instead of up, and put their things in a bonded facility are reaping the rewards of that because they're all taking them out now.
Okay, let's see. Another FTZ question. So can we request drawback if charged 125% before April 14th?
Yeah, as long as you re-export the goods. That's not a refund. Drawback is a recovery of tariffs on goods where the tariff was paid when it came in, and then you end up re-exporting those goods, either as a part of a manufactured assembly or as themselves in the same condition. If your import ends up leaving the country, then yeah, you can claim drawback on it. If not, no. That would be a refund, and there are no refunds.
Okay, is anyone involved in the semiconductor 232 investigation that actually understands the semi ecosystem?
No comment. I think that was a question asked by someone trying to get me to laugh. I think it's the typical USTR folks, and if what's going on there is like what's gone on with everything else, then there hasn't been a lot of input from the trade. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't even seem like customs is part of the conversation these days.
Right.
Are the Canada retaliatory duties going away?
They will once we have, I imagine, based on everything else that's happened, once we start negotiating USMCA again, the likelihood that they'll drop to 10% and go to nothing.
Okay, you have a suggestion to try some all-away eye drops to save you.
Thanks.
And here, a bit off topic, but are you expecting any changes to the port fees on Chinese-owned, operated, built vessels due to take effect October 14th?
I don't think it's going to be 1.5 million. We've gotten some guidance, right? It's only going to be, I think is it 3 or 5? I don't remember which one it was, but only a couple of voyages a year. And then along with that, they're going to be much, much less than that 1.5 million that we've been told. And they'll be based on the tonnage of the vessel, not a flat fee. So it'll be a percentage it'll be the tonnage of the vessel times a certain number. But we really don't have much more than that. You'll probably end up hearing more about that come, say, August, September period.
Yep. Any word on the Venezuelan and Russian oil buyer tariff?
Yeah, still dead in the water. We'll see if it ever happens, but still dead in the water because America is the world's second largest consumer of Venezuelan energy.
Yep. Oh, And here's Gregory wants to know, can you clarify why goods entered into an FTZ would not have the benefit of the lower tariff rates if exiting out during this 90-day period?
The law, really, the way the rules are written, these goods under the executive order, subject to these tariffs, it specifically says they have to go in under foreign privilege status, which means that you have to use the tariff when it goes in and not the tariff when it comes out.
Yep. And people are looking for clarification on the de minimis, right? So the CSMS, I agree, is not clear because it says 54% ad valorem rate or 100% per package. How do you know which one applies?
International post versus small package
Couriers?
and couriers and ocean carriage. That's how it's going to apply. We're still waiting. We're still waiting.
Yep. Okay. Oh, questions are not loading. And someone's asking how to get an invite for next week's webinar.
You know, I don't know how the invites go out. I'm sure someone from marketing, I know when we get a link generated, it goes out to people, but I don't know how it's going out.
Yeah, reach out to your local branch because they get sent the invite as soon as it's set up to share. So, have you heard of any changes to USDA guidelines of importation for items of non-animal origin, such as devices?
No.
Not FDA, USDA.
USDA. I have not, no. USDA of all the PGAs is probably the least vocal about what goes on there.
Yep, because they're saying BTOS in Norfolk is claiming there is a guideline for importing non-animal origin devices.
I don't know. So contrary to belief, I'm not the oracle. This is one thing I don't have an answer for, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not sure the total tariff duties cost is HTS code plus 10% plus 20% IEPA. For goods from China, that would be correct.
The pre-existing tariffs. So that could be 301s, your regular tariff, as well as anti-dumping and countervailing.
Yep. Do you have a list of the exemptions and the HTS codes that qualify?
That is. Go ahead, Carol.
I mean, we do. There is an Annex 2 that was put out with when the tariffs were initially rolled out. That's a list of all the HTS codes, which is a lot of different metals like copper and titanium and whatnot.
Rare earth materials.
Yeah, anything on that list is excluded from the reciprocal tariffs. Let's see. I saw on the CBP website that if a product made outside the USA has at least 20% value from components made in the USA, then that component value is tariff-free under a specific secondary HTS when importing. We have a 40% value component that's made in the USA added into a product that we're going to import, if this is correct. How do we go about implementing this when importing into the US? Talk to your broker.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is guidelines there's a lot of HTS codes out there these days. But yeah, there are guidelines on how to enter it. I mean, we are entering for some products 5 or 6 HTS codes on the line, so. But there is specific guidance for that out there. And someone was nice enough to post a list to our website. And yes, the Annex 2, there's a link for the Annex 2 on that website. So if you, Lynn Hall, thank you. She just posted the link. And if you go there, I mean, there's a lot of different tariff updates, but if you scroll down, there is a link to Annex 2 with a list of all the HTS codes that qualify for exclusion. Any thoughts on a timeline for seeing IEPA reduced or removed?
At best, 2 months. They'll want to have 2 quarters of data to review, so at least 2 months. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That would just be the earliest you'd probably see any type of comments about it or possible relief.
Okay, what are you hearing, if anything, about CBP challenging the timeframes that may have fallen under the on the water sailing
Oh,
for entries that were
okay.
submitted with exclusions for
Yeah,
lower duty rates?
lots. Carol, you want to take this one? I mean, we've been talking about
No,
this
you
for
can run
weeks
with
now.
it.
Yeah, it's ugly.
Lots of 28s.
So I'll start. You can jump in here. There's two arguments, right? The goods got to Canada and they moved in bond on rail to the U.S. Well, they're saying the final conveyance to the U.S. is the rail car. So the date that would be in effect is when it actually was transferred to the rail. So then you're going to get hit with the extra IEPA tariffs because that happened then. So the rules say the final conveyance destined to the United States. That's the first problem. The second one's going to be feeder vessels, where the
Yep.
ship left China and then it was a feeder vessel, and then there was some sort of a movement to bring it onto a second ship in wherever Colombo or wherever the case may be to come to the U.S. Same problem. The actual final conveyance to the U.S. was in fact far after the date. And on both of these, customs has been pretty clear lately, not before, but lately, that they'll be subject to the tariff because they were not on the final conveyance destined to the United States.
That was actually just updated today on the FAQ page by Customs that, yeah, the feeder vessels, it's that last vessel that departs directly for the US. That is your departure date, which really kind of stinks, but
I know we're starting to run out of time, but I did want to ask a question to everyone on here. We are toying with the idea of doing this long after the tariffs are sorted and doing weekly updates or bi-weekly updates, maybe go to twice a month to talk about whether or not, what's going on in trade, custom stuff, global trade, and having this as maybe like a twice a month event. I would be interested. You can let us know in email or tell your local branch if you think that would be useful. We're not going to do it if it's just a couple hundred people, if I'm being honest. So if there's enough of you that would find value in that, we may continue to do this.
okay. And we did get a note here from Ed that says, thanks again, Pete and Carol. I appreciate you both and these updates.
Yeah. It's mostly more
Uh,
Carol than Pete.
yes. And then we get, yes, we love this. So a lot of thanks. If shipping DDP from a particular supplier,
Uh-huh.
who is ultimately responsible if customs raises an issue?
Well, there's two answers to this. The first is it will be the import of record, which is the foreign. Normally, it's going to be a foreign importer. But if you're listed as the ultimate consignee, which you should be, so don't tell them not to do that. If you're listed, now you're party to the transaction, and you can have questions asked of you if customs determines that the value was fiddled with or there was some type of trickery and silliness going on. They can bring you into it asking if you were aware of the exporter's intention to circumvent the regulations. So you can still get wrapped up in it. And news alert, bad news alert, it's happening a lot right now where clients of ours who made that shift are now being asked all types of questions by CBP about what precisely went on with these entries. So Merry Christmas.
Mm. Thanks for this webinar. Yes, I would attend meetings after the tariff crisis is over, if ever. Thanks, Thomas. Lewis says twice a month would be great. Keep the beard.
I'll consider it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying I would attend bi-weekly.
We'll keep that in mind. I do see a question here. If you have Section 232, do you also pay 301s? Yes. So the 301s are considered part of those, previous tariffs prior to the crisis.
Yep. Yes, this has been very informative and pretty simple to work through. Very much appreciated. And I
Talk to
think
your
that's
local
it.
branch about that. Yeah, talk to your local branch about that. So we're gonna close out Q&A here. Just want to remind everyone that a recording and the slides will come out as soon as marketing has an opportunity to combine the files. We will be back next week. It appears that will be on Wednesday. We'll get you the date and the time as quickly as we can. Tell your friends. We're always here for you, right? Whatever we can do to help you, we're gonna try to do our best. And it's been a pretty rough month and a half, but we're getting through it together. if you need anything, just reach out. Thank you again to our marketing folks. And Carol, thank you so much for keeping this on the rails. You would not have believed what a mess it was without you last week. So thank you so very much. And thanks all of you. We'll talk to you next week.
Yes,
Take care.
thanks everyone.